Marty! Alex! Marty! Alex! Marty! Al! Marty? Alex? Today we're talking about Marty, St. Louis, because there is an idea that I saw percolating online recently, and in fact this isn't even a new thing. This has actually been kind of a common opinion about the Montreal Canadiens as of the past few, weeks here, I guess you could say. Because today we are referring to a post made on the R-Habs subreddit. This was posted by Ivan Demigod earlier yesterday on the 7th, and it talks about the Montreal Canadiens' first overall pick from 2022. Here are Juraj Slafkovsky's point totals since November 14. Now, November 14 was, of course, multiple weeks ago, and in that span, the Montreal Canadiens have played, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 games, and in those 11 games, Slav has himself a total of 1 goal and 2 assists. He only scored points in 2 out of these 11 games, and one of the games, of course, mathematically speaking, it was a 2-point game. The Columbus game, he had a goal and an assist. Great. He followed that up with an assist against the New York Rangers 3 nights later. But these 2 games are sandwiched in between multiple pointless streaks and, even worse, minus streaks for the big Slovak winger. He was a -4 against Vegas, a -3 against Boston, and -1s across the board in other games here. Juraj Slafkovsky has not been productive, and when you consider the point production that he had sustained last year, what he was able to accomplish, especially in the latter half of the season, Slafkovsky had 50 points in 82 games played, which was awesome. This season, he's got 14 points in 24 games played, which is on pace, if you do the math holistically, for a 47-point season. Now, 47 points in 79 games is not terrible. In fact, it's just a shade below what he had accomplished last year. But it gets a lot worse when you isolate just the recent stint of play since November 14th. Slafkovsky has 3 points in his last 11 games, and if you do the math on that, let's do 3 divvy 11, multiplied out by 82, that is a 22-point pace. So it begs the question, what's going on here? What's going on with Juraj Slafkovsky, and what does Marty St. Louis have to do with it? Well, let's go out there into the comment section of this post. The top comment says, "Put Slafkovsky back with Suzuki and Caulfield, please, Marty." Really baffling he hasn't done it yet. And from a basic standpoint, you can say, oh yeah, this is definitely like the way to go, right? Marty St. Louis had a formula, it was effective, it was working, these 3 guys were clicking, they were together at the start of the season, but it wasn't really all too great in 24-25. But last season, there was a lot of success built out of the line of Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slafkovsky, the Slafkovsky line, if you wanted to say that. And ultimately, if you have a first overall caliber guy like Slafkovsky, who is not doing as well as he did last season, he is not producing at all, you gotta get this guy going, would it not be an appropriate thought to say, okay, maybe put him back with the guys that he had had success with in the past? Who knows? In response to this idea, though, let's go out there and read a comment made by Four Crows Feast. "I've defended and put my trust in Marty St. Louis on just about everything else, but this decision, while keeping Newhook on the first line, is clearly nonsense. This whole narrative that Slafkovsky needs to carry a line himself is ridiculous. He's freaking 20 years old and the youngest player on our roster. He's younger than guys like Joshua, Logan Mailloux, and the same age as Hudson, Reinbacher, Beck, and Machar. Most of these players are not on the roster, and some are not even a year away. Slafkovsky was putting up stats like this at the beginning of his career until he was put with Suzuki and Caulfield. We were specifically told what good mentors these guys were and visually saw the improvement. He is still in the development phase, and what was helping his development was playing with talented players. It's ridiculous how literally the same people on this board will say, let him cook, to our prospects in Laval that are older than Slav, but demand that he carries a line on his own at the NHL level, with his current age. Do whatever it is to make him the best NHL player. Clearly he's not capable of doing this at this moment in time, which is fine. Most players his age aren't. Out of the players from his draft year, Wright, Nemec, Gauthier, and Jiricek have all seen time in the AHL recently. Basically, the only guy is Cooley, who has broken into the NHL without any setbacks. And I'm not going to use this comment as fuel to say that Logan Cooley should have been the first overall pick. No, that's not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying is that a lot of this is going to haunt Slafkovsky for a while. Because first overall picks are, like it or not, they're going to have that stigma attached to them when they're not performing, when they're not showing up in the first few seasons of their careers, when they're going through mini slumps. They are going to be ridiculed. And that's just the unfortunate nature about it. Sure, Slafkovsky is younger than Joshua. He is younger than Logan Mailloux. But realistically, you can understand why people are harder on Slafkovsky than they are on Joshua. Joshua was a 5th-round pick. He wasn't supposed to be anything because, let's face it, most 5th-round picks aren't. And the fact that the Canadiens even got a guy who played NHL games in a few years in that 5th round is a miracle. You're playing with house money at that point. For Juraj Slafkovsky, he was a first overall freaking guy. And first overall players come with first overall expectations. And while I'm not going to say that those expectations are reasonable, like, sure, Slafkovsky's 20. It's unreasonable in general to expect a 20-year-old to be carrying a line in the NHL. But if you're a first overall pick, there are going to be guys thinking that you're able to do that. And this all boils down to what we had been talking about over the past few years throughout the 2010s. I like to bring this argument up. I think it's a pretty good one considering the timeline of NHL first overall picks, but I think a lot of fans were misled by the 2010s first overall guys, because Nathan MacKinnon was a first overall guy who immediately had a 60-point season in the National Hockey League. Sure, he ended up declining a little bit after that season in ages 19, 20, and 21, but he eventually became a 140-point guy. He was great. You had Aaron Ekblad the next year, who was a top defenseman straight out of the draft. You had Connor McDavid the year after, who was a point per game out of the draft. You had Austin Matthews the year after that, who was a 40-goal scorer in his first year immediately after the draft. And on top of this, you had guys like Laine, Jack Eichel, who were also doing fantastic things in their first years of NHL eligibility. It wasn't really until the 2019 era where we started to see, oh yeah, this Jack Hughes guy's not really doing all too well. Oh, this Lafreniere guy's not really doing all too well. Oh, this Owen Power guy didn't even make the league right away at the first year of his NHL eligibility. And then it was Juraj Slafkovsky's turn. We as fans were spoiled by years worth of elite players coming out of the NHL draft at 18 years old that now there are unrealistically high levels of expectations for guys taken first overall. I'd say Macklin, Celebrini, and Connor Bedard are kind of a return to form to what we had 10 years ago, but in between that, Jack Hughes took a long time to break out. Alexis Lafreniere is only really doing that now. Owen Power, there are questions about whether or not his contract was really deserved. And then you have Juraj Slafkovsky, who was going through one of the worst stretches of his career points-wise, spanning back to the middle of November, where he's playing at a 20-plus point pace. Is this Slafkovsky's fault? Probably not. It's not his fault he was taken first overall. He was good enough to go there. But for Marty St. Louis, you gotta ask yourself, is this idea of St. Louis forcing Slafkovsky to drive his own line really working? Or would it be in everybody's best interests, for the Canadiens players, for the guys on the team, for Slafkovsky, for everybody else, to see Slav back on line number 1? No disrespect to Alex Newhook, he played pretty alright in the last Canadiens game. I definitely don't want to trash too much on Newhook, considering how much of a fan I was of him back in 2019 when he was draft eligible, but ultimately, if you wanted to contribute to the success of everybody on your squad, Slafkovsky on line 1 sounds like a better idea in my mind than Newhook, so I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Marty St. Louis, about this entire thought process here, whether or not Marty St. Louis is pulling off a big, fatal error for this Montreal Canadiens team at the moment. Slafkovsky, yay or nay? Line 1, line 2, what's the scoop here? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.